My name is Jamie Piles. I joined Samaritan in December of 1996. We were homeschooling our kids, and we were already thinking outside the world's box, if you will. And I saw a little tiny classified ad about this new kind of idea I'd never heard of before. My first reaction was, that's the kind of thing that we would do, isn't it? And so I finally called the number, talked to them, and the more I asked them questions, the more I liked their answers.
But when it hit that, ooh! Sing tennis! But they couldn't have me in the audience.
Advent is hopping. Welcome to Cross Politics on the FLF Feast Network. Pastor Toby Chuck Knox, I'm the water boy. And we got Dr. Scott Postma in the studio.
Yes.
Kepler Education. So thank you for joining us. Hope you're Advent doing things, every night with your family. We're getting there.
Yes.
We're getting there. We've had a busy month this week. Hopefully we're going to be hitting the Advent stride like real hard.
This week?
Real hard, yeah.
You guys,
for Christmas.
I know.
did you guys get the book?
Yeah.
You guys got the books, right? The Advent book?
Yeah.
The churches produced. That was awesome. Yeah. Have you been going to that?
King's Cross, did they not pass one out?
Yep, they did.
They did?
Everybody got
Aren't
one.
you a deacon?
Except for
over
the
there?
second service? Except for the second service?
Except for a particular deacon.
In the second? Oh.
Wasn't paying attention.
Interesting.
Ooh, you in trouble.
Hey, we've got a giveaway because it's
Yes.
Christmas. We're giving away gifts all month long.
Two
All-
more giveaways until our, because our wife show we're recording this week, and then that'll be, we're going to give away 30 tickets.
That's right. So
the
we've been giving away presents to all the Fight Laugh Feast Pub members. And so if you're a pub member, you're already automatically entered into the drawing.
That's right.
And if you haven't already joined, I guess it's kind of too late now because we're recording all
Well, it's
the
not too
final
late to
shows.
join, but just too late to get a gift. You know what I mean?
but Gabe, you ready?
Yes.
Are we doing it?
Okay, so we're giving away today.
doing?
We're going to be giving away Francis Fukushon Food for Thought because this is Advent. We got to celebrate. We need some food.
Yes.
We need to do it. And then we're giving away a Cross Politic apron. So it'll be shipped.
Those
to
are
them.
legit.
To go with it.
To go with the, because
While
you're going to
you're
cook, you're going to
cooking.
need an apron, right?
Yep.
And then we're giving away mugs because if, whatever you're cooking, that mug will handle the scotch, the wine, the coffee, whatever it is.
The eggnog.
The eggnog, all of it. So that's what we're giving away today. So our winner for today is Zach W. Zach W will be sending you email, food for thought, and apron for your wife.
Timing.
Wait, or Zach.
Why can't he have the apron?
Yeah, he can have it. It can go both ways.
Oh.
It's a black apron with white text.
Oh, Gabe, I don't like what you just did there.
I'm digging a hole further. It's no good.
Okay, well, Merry Christmas.
Zach.
Thanks for your support, Zach. Kepler is an online marketplace for classical Christian education that assures parents maintain their agency without forfeiting the assistance and expertise of qualified conservative Christian teachers. Kepler offers university model courses in the classical tradition that fit your schedule and your budget. Visit www.kepler.education. That's kepler.education. And use their simple search tool to find the course and teacher that meets your child's needs. Or simply ask for help to get assistance from a real human being. That's my favorite part about their ad. First time I read it, I was just sort of I wasn't expecting that line, but that's great. Come to Kepler, where there are real human beings.
Yes,
we're really grateful to have Dr. Scott Postma. He served as a minister for 20 years and as a Christian educator for 25 years. During this time, he's helped plant 2 churches, founded 2 private Christian schools, and is now the president and CEO of Kepler Education. Scott, thanks for joining us on Cross Politics.
Hey, thanks for the opportunity, guys.
Absolutely.
I don't see any classes on here for human diversity and stratification.
It's inherent in a great book's curriculum.
Man, this is great. This is really good. And you brought your Kuiper with you.
We're gonna get there.
Hold on, I want to get there just a second. But I think it would be really helpful, Scott, for you to start by explaining to our people just sort of what makes Kepler Education unique or different. So, I mean, many of our audience are, we are big Christian education fans. We're constantly plugging various options that families have at their disposal.
Homeschool, classical conversations, Kepler,
all these things.
New
And
St.
so,
Andrews.
what's unique about Kepler?
Yeah. Well, Kepler's not a school. So that's one of the things that make us very unique. We are a marketplace for classical education, which, as you mentioned in the opening, the intro there, that we allow the parents to, we help them with that agency, right? So they're not just outsourcing to a school. Some parents will say, well, I want to outsource to a school,
right?
But they can outsource just to one particular teacher. They want their child to study under a particular teacher or take one particular course, or if they want a whole diploma track, that's also available to them. But we have adult courses, teacher certification courses, dual enrollment for college-bound students. They can get regional accredited college credits, and you can fulfill a complete AA for about $2,200, and it's regional accredited. So
wow,
yeah,
okay. So you're a marketplace, which means, I assume that means that this list. So there's a course catalog that you handed us here, which means that these courses, so there are particular instructors,
right,
who then make these courses available.
Correct.
And so you're a marketplace in that sense, where you've got educators offering their expertise and their knowledge and their wisdom on particular subject matter, and then parents and students come through this marketplace and pick and choose what they want.
Absolutely.
Is that right?
Yep. So we're working with independent teachers. One of our taglines for a long time was empowering families by liberating teachers. So making it possible for educators to be outside of the system and to be able to, a head of household could support a family by offering as many courses as they want. They can set their own price. And then they work within a very generic framework that we provide to make sure that all the teachers are vetted, that they are Christian, classical, and conservative in the Burkean sense. And so we want to make sure that they're vetted that way. And then the teachers can set up their own schedule in terms of when they offer that marketplace, that face time for their class, what curriculum they want to use. And so somebody may come and there might be 3 or 4 different writing courses that would, they prefer a curriculum, or they prefer a particular professor, or a time or schedule or a budget. So there's all kinds of options for them to come there and make those choices.
Are all the courses live, or are some of them pre-recorded? Is it video courses or live?
Yeah, so we use the university model, which means that there are pre-recorded lectures for every course, reading, exercises, and then they come for 90 minutes of FaceTime every week with their instructor.
Okay. So both.
Yeah,
So there are video classes that then they can take at any time.
Yeah, it's not just like pre-recorded asynchronous kinds of courses. There's some weekly asynchronous work they do, but then weekly they come together in preparation for that seminar.
At least 90 minutes of live FaceTime.
Yep, every week.
Online.
Yep.
Okay.
Who was Johannes Kepler?
Johannes Kepler, yes. So early modern mathematician, and we sort of chose Johannes Kepler as our mascot, I guess, if you want to call it that, because he really represents in the early modern world that faith and reason, that combination of faith and reason, not divorced in any way. So Kepler, of course, we know, is famous for his studies in bringing about, elliptical understanding, how the harmonices mundis,
you're speaking in tongues now.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm about to.
Of the sphere, the harmony of the spheres, famous work that he did.
Yeah.
So Kepler would, figure out a math, problem solution to planetary systems on one page, and then turn and write a poem to the glory of God on the next page. At one point, Kepler his mother got caught up in those witch trials, and so while he's writing his magnum opus, Harmonices Mundis is the name of it, he actually travels down to Lisbon in the middle of this, writes a 128-page legal brief, and essentially puts an end to all these witch trials that are happening, as to get his mother released. So he's a rhetorician, he's a mathematician, he's a philosopher, he's a Christian, he's a
lawyer.
What's that?
He's a poet.
He's a poet.
He's a lawyer.
Yeah.
What? And if I recall correctly, he had some really interesting scientific thesis on that was kind of laid the foundation for creation arguments and stuff like that.
Yeah, the elliptical he recognized. So if you go back to the Ptolemaic view of the cosmos, Copernicus famously gives us alternative view that it's no longer geocentric but heliocentric, and Kepler built off of these. While Galileo is kind of under house arrest, can't do much, Kepler's over working with Tycho Brahe, and they're observing the stars, and they're writing out these equations and justifying and saying, yeah, actually Copernicus is right. This is more than just something to use, in our laboratories. This actually makes sense for the world, and so he really propagates this idea and really lays the foundation for guys like Newton and so on for the theories of motion.
You brought Kuyper with you.
Yeah.
Why'd you bring Abraham? We love some Kuyper around here, but why'd you bring Abraham Kuyper with you?
Well, so Kuyper is sort of a basis for an argument that Kepler, we have recently chosen to take ESAs from one particular state right now. We're working individually state by state.
ESA, like a school voucher program or
education savings account.
Yeah. Okay. Education savings account. And Kuyper had argued for the parental freedom in education. So there's a lot to this argument, and there's a lot of Christians who are against vouchers, against ESAs, and rightly so if understood a particular way. But what Kuyper wanted to do is distinguish between government subsidies. So this isn't the government giving private education help. What he wanted was for Christian parents not to be robbed by the state, recognizing in his sphere sovereignty that parents have the agency over their education, but the state also has an interest in education. And I'll just use an example for Idaho. Article 9 opens up for Idaho State Constitution that as a republic, the state has a right to argue for the education of its citizens, otherwise it can't survive. That's sort of the old classic liberal argument for government. But Kuyper recognizes that no education is neutral, right? So you cannot say that government education is the best for everybody, or the government's version of education is going to be best for everybody. And so he worked alongside others who had different worldviews with this theory in mind. Okay? So parents have the agency, that's God-given, but there's no temporal autonomous authority who gets to decide which worldview is the right worldview, which one is closest to reality. As Christians, we have a complete conviction that our view of the world is exactly right. But he would argue, well, so do the Muslims, so do the Catholics, so do every other worldview. So there's no autonomous temporal authority that can make that decision. So why not allow those parents to retain those tax dollars and direct them in the direction that would be best suited for their family? And so certain states in our union obviously are, there's all kinds of voucher things happening in different states and different approaches to this. Arizona, for example, has the ESA, the savings account, that basically takes a complete hands-off approach. Instead of directing that money to government schools, it goes into a parent savings account, and they direct it however they want to use it for education with virtually no oversight whatsoever. It's completely in the parents' hands to use that as they want, which has made a lot of legislators who are very pro-government school quite angry about that. But at the same time, parents have the right to
Is that the state ESA that you're accepting?
Yes.
It's the Arizona one.
The Arizona. We're going to look at each one individually to see how they're framed.
Yeah.
Because obviously there can be complications, as many people have pointed out, but Arizona is an example of one that's actually doing it in a more, whether they're conscious of it or not, it's a Kuyperian approach.
Did Kuyper, I'm sorry, go ahead, Pastor.
No, that's all right, go ahead.
Did Kuyper, when he said for parents to retain their funds, did he mean that by not taxing? Because I don't know how anything can go through the government without them somehow creating a job that requires more money to go back to the government.
Well, see, that's the fundamental problem. And as Americans who understand, free speech and we understand our particular, view of a Republican society or a constitutional republic, we recognize that and we see that as a problem. Nevertheless, one of the problems that we're facing is all of your state constitutions don't recognize that. They recognize in the Constitution, you'd have to change the Constitution for us to be able to retain those funds.
You think it should be changed? It's one of the things that we need to work on changing?
Oh, yeah. I just think that ESAs are an incremental approach toward in the right direction. And given the maybe the tide of, starting back in the 1980s of homeschooling and private schooling, the tide is turning against government schools, and it has been for some time. So ESAs, I think, are, done rightly, are an incremental way of parents recovering those funds that are already being captured, whether they get them or not. And Kuyper argued you're stealing from the parents who are home educating or putting their kids in private school because they already have to pay that tax anyway, and now they have to come up with the money to pay the tuition, a second time. So why not let them retain that? And that's a step in the right direction. And in this particular work here, documents at the end, he was dissatisfied with how far they were able to go, but recognized that a compromise in politics always has to happen, in incremental steps. And I think that's a good place for us to look at and recognize, moving in the right direction. Certainly there's going to be dangers that, are worth talking about, but moving in the right direction, it would be wise.
I think we've talked about this quite a bit on the show, actually. The momentum point is spot on. There's a massive momentum, especially since COVID. People pulling their kids out of schools, I think crazy overreach.
Homeschool increasing dramatically.
With the lockdowns, drag queens, whatever. Like
porn in libraries. There's just
2 million less government schools in the last 2 years.
Yeah, so
you mean less students?
Less students enrolling in government
So
schools,
momentum, I mean, 110%. And I think that if Christians are not thinking about how to push this momentum harder, then we're crazy. So 110% there. My great concern, though, is that I looked at a couple of the ESA programs, one of them being Arizona earlier this year, and came away thoroughly dissatisfied.
Mm-hmm.
Despite the lack of hooks in the use of money, like the Arizona education budget is in the process of like ballooning.
Sure.
Because they are basically paying off the teacher unions to do it. Which is how you do it, right? Which means, though, that basically this is socialism on steroids.
Well,
because you have the overall budget is like massively ballooning.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, it's being propped up, I think, by COVID dollars that are still in the Arizona coffers. But basically, ultimately, this is going to come back and smack everybody in their property tax dollars and everywhere they bring those, wherever they draw those education dollars out. So I think it's like socialism often does is it's a game. It's like a pyramid scheme where you say, I want to give them their dollars back, but you're giving them back while running around the back end and mugging them for more. I mean, everybody.
Yeah.
What is it? Margaret Thatcher said, eventually you run out of other people's money.
Right.
I mean, it's like that's like what this. I think that's what the Arizona system is.
I don't know. Now, maybe you may have more insight into some of those more particular parts of the structure and the way that they're funding this or way that they're allowing it to happen. I think my thinking is that anything that we're doing incrementally, moving money back into people's hands, not. And this is the point that Kuyper made. We don't want to think of them as subsidies or call them subsidies because we're not saying that the government's giving us money to do that. We're saying we're allowing parents to direct those funds. Now, if the state's going around the back but
that's what Arizona's is. I mean, Arizona's plan is it is a subsidy, and it's like it is socialism. Like they're taking far more money from property owners than
I would have
before.
to see. I would honestly. I don't I'm not arguing with you that isn't true. I didn't see anything in everything that I read that showed it that way. Like North Carolina and Nevada are a little bit different. They're structured a little bit differently, and those states I would be very reluctant to take.
I read some
because of the strings connected to the account.
Yeah, and I don't know all of their strings yet. Again, that's in the investigation process right now. But Arizona had no strings attached to it, and it was allowing because I've seen the accounts from the parental side where they. Those funds are directed anywhere they want to direct them without oversight.
Right. No, I remember that part. Yeah. That's accurate. Yeah. The concern was when I went actually to the websites that were championing the programs, what they were saying, like just straight up, the supporters of the program was how much the Arizona Education Department, how much more, how fast the whole budget was growing.
Okay.
Yeah. And that money has to come from somewhere.
Sure.
Again, I think in the short term, I think that is getting propped up by some COVID money, which there's just more socialism.
Yeah.
But that's my concern is that money has to get funded somewhere, and eventually it comes from the people.
Right.
And so I
so
agree
Toby,
with
would you push back then on let's say it? So you're pushing back on maybe voting for it. You wouldn't vote for it, but let's say it passes. Yeah. Then do you do the ESA thing?
The concern I have though is, and this would be another question for you is, I wonder how much work you've done the Canadian school system, because basically we have a number of friends in Canada who Canada did this ESA voucher thing about 30 years ago, 40 years ago. And now all private schools in Canada are functionally government schools.
Well,
okay. And so now I know you want to make a distinction between subsidy and so on, but but there has to be a difference in actual function for it to actually be different. So for example, if I get an actual voucher that says any property taxes that you would have paid into the government school system, you get to keep, and you can pay for whatever schooling you want, I'm all for that. That's me actually keeping my money.
And that's a bill I'm running with the legislator here in Idaho.
I'm not taking some of Gabe's money and some of Knox's money and some of your money to pay my bills. That's called socialism. I'm actually keeping my own money. That'll be one thing. But I think whenever you start running all the money through the government, which is just a money laundering system.
I don't disagree. Yeah, I don't disagree with that on the big scale, theory in the way that the government works. Ideally, it would be great if they didn't take our money first and do that. Yeah. I just think incrementally working back, except for having a state, constitution, have an amendment to the state constitution that takes that money out. In Idaho's, for example, is extremely aggressive against sectarian and religious schools.
Right, because of Mormonism.
Yeah, sure.
But I think it would just be worth I'd love to see, I'm all for, let's dismantle it.
Yeah.
And incremental steps toward actually doing that, I'm there, sign me up. I'm just concerned that, again, that was the offer in Canada. That was the plan. And there were a bunch of people in Canada that said, look, this is our chance.
Yeah.
Would you say, though, that Canada, though, on several other, medicine and others, are far more socialistic in their mindset overall? Whereas for America, and maybe I'm wrong on this, but for America, the pushback we're seeing, the tide that we're seeing go in a different direction, allow parents to maintain or keep, some of the tax dollars that would be given to government schools, and the momentum continues on. Now, could everybody just lay down, take the money, and then they attach a string to it, and everybody says, "Well, I don't want to give up"? That's a possibility.
Which is what conservatives have been doing for decades.
Yeah, the concern I have too is just so to Gabe's point, once you actually take the money, so let's say you didn't vote for it, wasn't your favorite plan, but there's the money, and you say, well, I guess we should, let's take it and hope that we can incrementally tear it down. I don't know how schools don't get addicted to the money. And so so this is what happened this is what has already happened in higher education in America. With the exception of Grove City College, New St. Andrews College, Hillsdale, and I don't know, maybe one or two others, Christian higher education is addicted to government money.
I mean, that's why TCU, which was a thoroughly Christian university, Baylor was a thoroughly Baptist Christian university. Yeah. They've all gone woke. They all TCU has LGBT dorms, all that stuff, and now TCU only uses their logo. They don't spell out Texas Christian University in any of their marketing materials anymore. That's how bad it is.
But I think people get addicted to that money, and it's you build budgets off of it, and initially you're like, well, we'll have a contingency plan because if it goes bad, we want to be able to drop this like a hot rock. But it's everybody has that contingency plan at the beginning, and then a quarter of your budget is built on it, then a third of your budget is built on it, then a half of your and it allows you to build a building or it allows you to hire certain teachers, and now it's livelihoods. And at some point, I think all these colleges were we can't possibly drop this because then we would go under. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the story that we've seen over and over again.
Yeah,
that I'm concerned about.
I honestly don't disagree with that, and I would not be a pro-socialist, in any fashion. I'm convinced that if we're careful, I think we could make incremental steps, and I would love to see it continue to go, in a much better direction. But and I think we do pick and choose, to be really honest, sometimes. I mean, because I don't know, because I don't do anybody else's taxes, but I know a lot of Christians take the child tax credit, that are given in the government, which is nothing more than a socialist handout.
Right.
And so we pick and choose the kinds of things sometimes that we're willing to take. And if we're thoughtful and we're intentional about it, I think it's possible. Is there are there concerns and the issues? I absolutely think so.
Yeah.
One of the ways Kepler, and I'll just mention this, one of the ways Kepler, I think, because the diversity of, we're not just an Arizona school, obviously.
Right.
This is one source. Would not inflate in any way, would not inflate the cost of our courses because teachers are the cost of those courses are functioning on a completely different level. This would just allow families who are, in Arizona to be able to use the kind of courses by directing that money there. And if there was ever strings attached, I would hope now, who knows what's going to happen, 10 years after I'm gone or whatever,
Right.
I would hope that it wouldn't continue to take it.
Great. I'm going to read this ad.
Yeah.
And then Knox has an amazing question for you.
Whoa.
You guys are aware that we have a new app, right? There's a brand new Pub TV Fight Laugh Feast app. If not, you should download it right now. Head on over to your favorite app store, type in Cross Politic or Fight Laugh Feast or Pub TV. And once you find the app, you may need to update your old app if you have an old version of ours.
Especially Androiders.
Especially you droiders.
Sorry.
You may need to delete your current FLF app and then download it. But once downloaded, you'll be able to view or listen to our content right on your mobile device. As always, if you'd like to sign up for a Pub membership, head on over to fightlaughfeast.com. That's fightlaughfeast.com. There's a whole bunch of free content on the app.
Yeah. Just one more encouragement there too, is that if you sign up to join the club, don't do it through the app or Apple and Google get some of the money. They get some of the cut. Go straight to our website. You'll still get your login access.
Yeah, and then you can log in and there's a button of past conference talks and a bunch of other great content. Gabe's This America series. Is the cooking show up yet?
It's coming.
It's coming. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. For like Christmas or New Year's?
You were
New Year's.
Maybe
just
New Year's.
teasing us.
Yeah, we got a cooking show coming that Knox has been working on, a bunch of other great content as well. So appreciate your support. And if you're already a Pub member, really appreciate you. All right, Knox.
Dr. Postma, I have a problem I need your help with here. So unlike my kids, I don't have a classical education. And I'm starting to realize almost at every dinner that
they're getting better and better every day. It's like very tangibly noticeable.
Okay, so we share. Me and Gabe have a problem.
Kids are like speaking in Latin, and you're like, wait, what are you talking about?
That ain't funny.
For real. That's
I'm like,
actually
show me a little respect and speak the way I can understand it.
and they're having these conversations about history. Anyway, they're getting a classical education, which I want them to have.
Yeah.
But I'm realizing, and my oldest is in 10th grade, I'm realizing pretty soon my conversation with them is going to be very small.
They'll be like, Dad, let me explain it to you like you can understand it.
All right.
Stop talking down to me.
300 BC.
Jelly on the bottom shelf.
Yes. And so one of the things I've noticed is that I need to actually start getting a classical education myself. It's not enough for my children. I got to talk to my grandkids. And if these are the kind of people my grandkids are going to be around, I'm not even going to be able to have a conversation with them. So I noticed you have adult learning and teacher certification. Let's just take that second half off because I'm not going to be a teacher. Okay, I'm just not looking for the certification. But if you had to take parents, someone like me and like Gabe, obviously, who don't have a classical education, what kind of curriculums on this list would you say you have to, you need to have these things?
Yeah.
Because I'm guessing what I'm noticing with my kids is that they're processing, when we watch the news or we talk about world, they're processing this stuff a lot faster, and their anchors are set so well that they have better responses quicker than I do. And I'm like, that's really good. Now you don't think about it all the way through yet, but that's really quick. They don't even know that they're doing it. And so I'm guessing some of this would help me, but what, because there's a lot on this list.
Well, so
old Western culture for adults.
Yeah.
Is that a good one?
Yeah. So this is, that's Roman Road's curriculum, going all the way from the Greeks to the early moderns and courses for adults. Now there's several different ways that adults can take advantage. And the fact is, this is probably just about every single classically, Christian educated student has their parents have this dilemma that you just described, right? How do we get this education? I listen outside the door. I've heard those kinds of conversations often, from parents. But so Dr. Robert Woods is our Dean of Academics. He founded and chaired the Great Books Honors College at Faulkner, where I did my doctoral program. And so he offers a series of preceptorials and micro courses. Now this can be crossover between teacher certification and just adult courses. But these are 1 week. So you do a short read and then you have 1 or 2 sessions where you're in a classroom seminar and have discussions over short reads. And I think there's probably 50 or 60 micro courses. So this is for a busy adult who, you've got jobs, you've got kids raising, you got all kinds of things happening. So your time and commitment to reading and then having Socratic discussions about these readings and particular readings are available. Preceptorials are a little bit longer, or then we have all kinds of adult courses like you just mentioned, Old Western culture, that takes you basically through Greeks, Romans, Christendom, and early moderns to get a picture of what C.S. Lewis called the Old Western culture.
So Christianity and culture, is that what you're teaching?
I'm teaching that.
Christianity and culture. Hey, boy, Ace, touch not, you should be touched.
There's a class on G.K. Chesterton.
Touch not, you should be touched. Okay, yeah, we'll talk about that in a second when you get a chance to talk.
And then Screw Tape Letters.
I want to talk about recovering Christian humanism in the 21st century.
That's the human diversity and stratification class that I took at University of Idaho.
Yeah, something tells me that's not the same.
Gabe would have been really fun to have in class, I think.
That was a riot.
This sounds really interesting. What do you teach? What is this about?
Okay, so Christian humanism is the idea that Christianity has purchase on the culture. So just to take kind of a historical...
Purchase on the culture.
Yeah, in other words, Christianity, Orthodox Christianity, actually still has something to say about the culture. So think about this historically. Up until what we'd call the Enlightenment, say late, 18th century or mid 18th century, was the very first time in history where you could be any kind of a scholar or theologian and legitimately call yourself an atheist, where that would be acceptable in terms of like, okay, this is a legitimate philosophical position that people could try to uphold. Right. So that's the very first time in history. By the mid 20th century, pointing to the Inklings, Mark Grief is one example, argues that's the last time in history you could be a Christian and legitimately be looked at as someone who has a legitimate philosophical position.
Actual scholar.
Yeah, and not be some,
right.
evangelical kook out there.
Right.
And so recovering Christian humanism saying that because of the incarnation, because of Christianity, all the things that secularism is trying to take, this is cut flower, right? We want the bloom, but we don't want the root. And Christianity actually has the purchase on culture for human flourishing. And so it's a recovery of a Christian worldview as a humanistic approach. So a lot of times when people think of humanism, they automatically think secular humanism or atheistic humanism. Right. But Christian humanism says otherwise. So C.S. Lewis, Chesterton, Tolkien, Flannery O'Connor, these would all be considered like Christian humanists.
So can we take and apply some of what you're talking about just to some current stuff real quick? Because I'm intrigued. So have you heard about the guy in Iowa who tore down the...
Briefly, yes. Okay. I read a brief thing on social media.
So there's a lot of Christians who haven't taken your class.
That's funny.
And it seems to be that there a lot of Christians are saying, hey, man, this isn't... So it was inside of the state capitol, and these supposed Satan worshipers would decide to have this altar erected. And he just went up there, decapitated the thing, and tore it down. And Christian lawyers and even Christian ethics teachers are saying... Pastors, and representatives combined are saying this is a neutral space. He has no right.
He values free speech above all.
To come in here and to do this in this neutral space. Even though I disagree as a Christian about the whole Satan thing, this is how would older Christians before this Enlightenment moment even thought about something like this? And what is the purchase? You say?
So this wouldn't be the best example as an answer, but what came to my mind while you're talking about is C.S. Lewis in that essay he writes De Descriptione Temporum on the description of times. He says in the old Western culture, he said people are saying that we're turning to paganism. I wish we would, because he believed that would lead us to actual Christianity again. And it's an interesting argument that he makes, but old paganism isn't the same thing as modern paganism or modern
explain that.
That's like his. I mean, that's what Till We Have Faces is all about. You read Till We Have Faces?
Yeah.
How's that working out for you?
That's
courses
the hardest book for me to swallow from C.S. Lewis.
It's the best book.
That's what people say.
Yeah. I think it's like that's
it's probably one of the toughest.
What were we going to say?
Well, no, I was just going to say the idea that old time paganism, even if they had the wrong object of worship, they still recognized an authority outside the self, right? There was an authority in the supernatural realm to which they owed obeisance, even if they had the wrong object.
And until we have faces, that's contrasted with this sort of is set in sort of ancient Greece, but there's this sort of Greek philosopher character who doesn't believe in any of the gods. Everything is rationalistic, everything is scientific, but he kind of represents that same resurgence of Enlightenment rationalism and modernism that just says all there is our minds, sort of secular humanism.
Yep.
But through the story, using this myth, Lewis is basically arguing, though, that the ancient pagans were closer to the truth than the rationalistic philosophers. And so that is an interesting way of thinking about this story, because you have I don't like this Satanist thing is like not, I don't think they like, I was thinking about also, it occurred to me kind of like we'll just keep bringing Lewis books up. This will be the Lewis show. Yeah. In The Last Battle, you have this sham Aslan, come see Aslan and then come see, Tashlin. And it's this sham. It's totally Halloween dress up. Yeah. Like this Satan altar thing.
Right.
But you summon the gods long enough, and the gods show up, and so you end up with Tash there and Aslan there ultimately, and so I think there was a sense in which this Halloween-y thing going on in the state capitol is really just this guy made it out of pool
noodles,
and bungee cords and stuffed a head full of trash bags, and it's like this total cheese ball thing. And at the same time, I do think we're teetering on the edge of what's left of Enlightenment rationalism, and we're about to plunge into a darkness that I don't think we have any idea about.
Yeah, we don't have a capacity to conceptualize how to navigate any of that.
Well, that's what's crazy is that I expect to argue with the pagans like that, but what you're describing, this is the Christians that we're having an argument like this.
Right.
Like,
the Christians have embraced essentially an Enlightenment paradigm.
Sure.
They're saying there's nothing real here. This is not a real Satan altar. There's gods are not real. They're a bunch of rationalists.
They take that materialistic worldview and then we apply, I say we, in the current Christianity, and apply, biblical beliefs or Christian beliefs, but without a real supernatural worldview.
Right.
This, and not to change the subject from there, but this is one of the reasons that Flannery O'Connor always intrigued me, because she had, taking from St. Augustine, this idea of an anagogical vision that all human beings, everything that happens on earth has eternal consequences, that all human beings have a foot in the eternal and a foot on earth, so to speak. It's the idea that when C.S. Lewis said you've never met a mere mortal, the idea that there is a supernatural realm at work all the time, and we are inhabiting that at the same time we're inhabiting this material world. But a lot of Christians in the modern world that want to give space to all these other ideas and just leave
this neutral public square,
this secularism, are capitulating to this idea that it really is just neutral, that there isn't anything. Did pool noodles and bungee cords actually represent any kind of, in and of itself per se? Did it have some sort of threat to us? No, but the idea in terms of what it symbolizes, right? That thing that it's attached to, Paul even uses in Scripture, doesn't he? He talks about the fact that we know that idols aren't anything, except those who worship them are worshiping demons. Right. So there is a demonic attachment to those things. Even if the thing itself isn't anything, there is that thing for which it symbolizes, that thing for which it actually has a material representation for the supernatural.
This is why you need a classical Christian education for your kids.
Yes, and yourself. All right, what's the website that people can go to check out Kepler?
www.kepler.education, and the full word education. We're not edu, so education.
Okay.
Kepler.education.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much for joining us on the show, man. Appreciate it.
Thanks, man.
We can talk about that more.
Thank
All right. Hey, if you're single, get married. If you're married, have you some kids. And if you have kids, go
Kepler
baptize them. Until tomorrow, love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Love your neighbor as yourself. Go fight, laugh, and feast. This is Cross Politic. Yes, Gabe, that too. That too. Kepler Education.
Hi, I'm Luke Ritchie. Wrong timeline. Okay, that's better. Time travel mechanics can get a little bit tricky. I'm Luke Ritchie, Chief Visionary Officer of Gravity Jack. In 2009, we founded Gravity Jack and essentially patented AR. What I'm about to tell you about is a vision that was 14 years in the making. War Tribe of Binyamin. This is a game that feels so real, it might be. It's a genre-defining game for AR and mobile and the Apple Vision Pro. We've integrated artificial intelligence not just into the characters in the game, but actually in the business model of War Tribe. So I love augmented reality games. They're one of my favorites. But the problem is it seems like they've added AR as an afterthought into the game. What if you sat down for 14 years and planned the entire thing around augmented reality? Games make a ton of money, and typically that money doesn't end up in the pocket of the players. We intend to change that. Lastly, and this is important, half the world has never and never will be targeted by big tech for an AI, natural language processing engine. We're definitely going to change that. War Tribe of Binyamin has gameplay like you've never seen before. We have portals opening everywhere, we have holographic communication, but what's really cool too is the world of 2133 is accurately geo-overlaid on the world of today. We're laser focused on ROI for our shareholders, which is you. One of the things we're doing that's super unique that's never been done before is taking 10% of in-game revenue monthly and giving it off as a dividend. The other co-founders and myself started Gravity Jack in 2009, but in 2007 we'd actually sold our company to a gaming company. We've hired the best of the best in terms of game development. Our director of development, product designer are all veterans in the gaming space. And not only that, we're going after a market that's gigantic. We're combining 4 huge major markets: artificial intelligence, augmented reality, translation, and gaming, all for a combined market value of $1.85 trillion.
Our incredible history has led us to be experts in mobile development, augmented reality, AI, gaming, and computer vision. It's been a wild ride here at Gravity Jack. A benefit to being so early on in augmented reality has led to a robust patent portfolio with active revenue and more to come. We've had the privilege of working with clients such as Oscar Mayer, Kraft, Lincoln, Samsung, T-Mobile. We've also worked on non-lethal Department of Defense contracts as well. We were a reference developer for Meta on the Oculus 2 directly, creating a game where other developers look to our source code for best practices. Early on in Gravity Jack's history, we did a game for Double Down Casino, and at the end of that contract, it was grossing $35 million a month. Our robust history has led us to be experts in augmented reality, AI, gaming, computer vision, and mobile development. Play to earn opportunities for the impoverished create an AI language model for unreached people groups, allowing us to have an eventual monopoly on speaking to half the planet. Our focus is shareholder dividends immediately after the game and into the future to create a game that's going to blow the world's minds. And we're pulling people out of poverty and into productivity. So what's the ask? Join the Binyamin.